Hi, my name is Dr. Jeb Wallace. I'm the horn professor at Wichita State University and principal horn with the Wichita Symphony Orchestra. Today we're going to be talking about the Concerto for Horn, Opus number 8 by Franz Strauss. Before we get started talking about the music, I'd like to say a few things about the composer. Franz Strauss is the father of Richard Strauss, who is probably the more famous composer in the Strauss family. He wrote music and lived during the 19th century. He was born in 1822 and died in 1905. He was a virtuoso horn player who played principal horn of the Bavarian Opera Orchestra and taught at the Royal School of Music in Munich. During Franz Strauss's life, he had the good fortune to premiere many of the Wagner operas that we're familiar with today. Written in 1865, the Concerto Opus number 8 is constructed in one continuous movement with 3 large sections. The sections that we'll be talking about today all occur in the first large section. In the first section, from rehearsal A to rehearsal B, there are 3 very important things to consider when preparing this work. The first is that Franz Strauss was really trying to emulate the human singing voice with this piece. That informs us in many aspects of our preparation. Number 1, we want to create very long phrases. Number 2, we want smooth, connected notes. In other words, we want to keep the air moving in a very purposeful way between the notes so it sounds seamless like the human voice. And number 3, we want to keep a very steady singing 8th note subdivision at all times. The second selection occurs between rehearsal D and rehearsal F. This section starts with a heroic fanfare with virtuosic 16th note passages going into the upper register above the staff and then very quickly, by thirds, descending down below the staff. These are treacherous passages that should be practiced slowly. I like to practice them slurred first. Then I like to try practicing them in swing style, so emphasizing every other note and slurring. Gradually, then we add the tongue and articulate the notes but play everything long. And then ultimately, we can play them short and staccato as they are printed. Then at letter E, the music recedes back to the lyrical style that was presented in the first section. So it's important that we recapture that very romantic, lyrical, singing quality from the first section. And that takes us all the way to the end of this passage. The third and final section occurs between rehearsal F and rehearsal G. This section is marked animato, so it should be played slightly faster than the previous 2 sections. I used 100 beats per minute as a baseline in the first 2 sections, and so for this third section, 104, perhaps 108 is a good target tempo. In this section, it's really very virtuosic music. It sounds very much like woodwind music. I like to imagine the sound and the nimble quality of the clarinet or the oboe when I'm performing this movement. It's important to keep the long phrase in mind, the 8-bar phrases, and to keep a very steady pulse. This is particularly difficult and challenging in the 4th and 8th measure of rehearsal F, where we have the grace notes. I would encourage you to start slow, perhaps around quarter note equals 66, and gradually increase the speed until you have reached your target tempo. In closing, I'd encourage you to listen to your most beautiful, round, romantic sound, rich in overtones on every note. Always subdivide at the 8th note or the 16th note level, depending on what's appropriate for each passage. Because this is a virtuosic piece, you'll want to use faster air in the high register and slower air in the low register. Finally, be brave, be expressive, and have fun. Good luck.